Hello and welcome to the Rugby Roundup, February 5, 2025. My name is Big Mike, here at Big Mike Sports. Now let's talk some rugby. On this week's episode, we look at last weekend's Six Nations and Rugby Europe Championship games in the international game, as well as club results from Japan League 1 and Premiership Women's Rugby upcoming this weekend. All of these competitions continue, as well as a game in the URC. Now, as always, if you would like me to talk about any teams, any games, any competitions, please let me know. Best places to do so: YouTube at Big Mike Sports and at Instagram at Big Mike Sports NZ. Now let's get to the roundup. We are going to start international men's rugby. Last weekend saw the first round of the Six Nations for 2025. This one kicked off in France at the Stade de France, with France hosting Wales. France going into this one as one of the favourites of the entire competition. Wales have not had a win in the international game since the 2023 World Cup. Final score in this one: France 43, Wales 0. It was 28-0 at half-time. There were cross kicks galore. The Welsh could not keep up. They could not defend. 2 yellow cards to Wales, 1 red card to Intermac for the French. The big difference in this one is that one of these teams is absolutely trash. The Welsh captain after the game did say that there were some positives in this one, but you can't help but think that he was full of absolute baloney. Then let's go to Murrayfield in the capital city of Scotland as Scotland hosted Italy. This one finished 31-19 to Scotland. First half, Scotland scored a few tries, getting out to a 19-9 victory at half-time. The kicks coming to Tommaso Allen for the Italians. Italy then got back to 19-all with a phenomenal start in the first 20 minutes of that second half, but Scotland got 12 unanswered points between the 60th and the 70th minute. This one had a great fight from Italy, but they just could not keep up with this building Scottish team. The big difference in this one was the closing ability of the Scots. Italy are still just a bit off, as they were in the November international window. Final game in the Six Nations last weekend was one of Big Mike's big 3 games. This one, Ireland hosted England at Aviva. England did score the first try and went into halftime 10 points to 5 up, but they did go down 27-22 to the Irish. Ireland got out to 27-10 before 2 tries in the last 5 minutes to England to make it a bit more respectable, give them a bonus point. The big difference in this one is England again continuing their pattern from last year of not being able to hold on to leads, similar to what they showed against New Zealand and Australia. Interesting fact about the first round of the Six Nations was that all 3 home teams won. Also in Europe was the kickoff of the Rugby Europe Championship. Now, this is an 8-team competition with 2 pools of 4, top 2 teams in each pool going into the semi-finals. This also doubles as your 2027 Rugby World Cup qualifiers for Europe, as all of the teams in the Six Nations have already qualified. Those top 2 teams from each pool will qualify and will determine what they rank from Europe 1 through Europe 4. The bottom 2 teams from each pool will go into their own set of semi-finals, with the winning team of that being Europe 5 and going into that repechage for the final spot. So I should have done the preview last week. My apologies. Let's look at the teams in Pool A. Now, we have Georgia ranked 12th in the world, Spain ranked 18th, the Netherlands, who are 24th, and the 29th ranked Switzerland. Now, this is Switzerland's first time in the Rugby Europe top division, replacing Poland. In Pool B, we have the 16th ranked Portuguese squad, 20th Romania, 28th Belgium, and the 31st ranked Germany team. Results from last weekend: the newbies Switzerland travelled to the absolute favourites of Georgia and unfortunately went down with the biggest margin ever seen in this competition. Georgia beating Switzerland 110-0. The other favourite in Pool A, Spain, got a good victory over the Dutch, 53-24. In Pool B, the two favourites being Portugal and Romania to get those automatic spots. Romania defeated Germany 48-10, and Portugal beat Belgium 40-30. The second competition in Europe last weekend where every home team won. All right, to club results now. Let's start with the men's game with round 6 of Japan League 1 Division 1. One of my big 3 games last week was the first place Wild Knights taking on the D-Rocks, who were in last. This one finished 53-26 to the Wild Knights. There were some big blowouts in this game, such as the Kobe Steelers taking down the Black Rams 44-15. The Blue Revs, who were sitting in the top 4, went down to Suntory Sungoliath 33-14. The Kubota Spears have snuck into the top 4 with a 40-12 win over the Dynabors. Brave Lupus remained in second position with a 35-12 win over Honda Heat. And in the only close game of the weekend, the Cannon Eagles 24-20 over Toyota Verblitz. The table, the top 4, we're looking at the Wild Knights, who are unbeaten 6 from 6. Brave Lupus having 5 from 6, only that one loss to the Blue Revs, and the Cannon Eagles and Kubota Spears both sitting at 4 wins from 6 games. In Premiership Women's Rugby, the big game of last week was the 4th place Chiefs taking on the 2nd place Harlequins. If the Chiefs won this one, they would secure most likely their place in the top 4, and they went down 31-30. Other games from the weekend: Gloucester Hartpury keep on top with a 38-7 win over the Leicester Tigers, and Saracens defeated Trailfinders 31-17. The Bristol Bears, who could have snuck into 4th position with a win, went down 31-22 to the Lightning. The table we're looking at: Gloucester Hartpury and Harlequins are sitting on top with 11 wins from 14 games. Saracens, the Saracens girls, they are 10 wins from 14. The Chiefs have 9 wins from 13 games, and Bristol Bears are 2 points behind them on the table with 8 wins from 14. There were no sevens action last week, and that is it for our roundup. There were some pre-season games for the Super Rugby teams over the last couple of weekends. The big one was the Reds going into Bristol to take on a young Bristol Bears squad, and the Reds winning this one 82-21. 82 points in a pre-season game, whether it's a strong team or not, is a good sign for the Queensland Reds in 2025. All right, now let's look forward to this upcoming week of rugby. We'll start with men's international action in the Six Nations in that second round. Now, Italy are hosting Wales in Rome. This is 10th in the world versus 11th. Both teams winless after last week. Italy will be wanting to stay above Wales in the world rankings and make sure they're not seen as the bottom feeding squad in the Six Nations. Wales are so desperate for that win and will be eyeing up the Italians as one of the weakest squads to take on in this competition. Now, the 7th ranked England squad, who did have that loss to Ireland, will be hosting the French at Twickenham. England have not won against a top-tier squad since March, since last year's Six Nations, and France are absolutely rolling. Can the French dominate in London? Big game of the weekend. The Scots are taking on the Irish at Murrayfield. This is 6th versus 2nd in the world. Ireland have been good, but they are not at their best. Scotland will know this. Scotland are building. They've got that young squad, and they will be looking to be the banana peel for the Irish. Neither of these teams have played France. They've got big games coming up. 2 unbeaten squads in this competition. This is Scotland's chance for a good, decent upset. All right, looking at the Rugby Europe Championship, Game 2, all of the teams that won last weekend are taking on teams that lost. We have in Pool A, the 12th ranked Georgia squad coming off that 110-point victory, taking on the Dutch, hosting the Dutch. Switzerland will be hosting their first game in Rugby Europe Championship against the Spanish squad, who will be looking to secure their place in the top 2 in their pool. In Pool B, Belgium are hosting Romania. Belgium will be looking at this one as the one that they might be able to get to sneak into the World Cup. Portugal are hosting Germany, the best and worst teams in these pools, or in this pool, sorry. All the teams that lost last weekend will need a victory this week to ensure that they might still have a chance of qualifying as Europe 1 through 4. Now in the club game, on the men's side of the world, the URC has 1 game. Obviously, most of these countries that are represented in the United Rugby Championship are in the Six Nations, but there's a catch-up round, a catch-up game for the South African teams. It is the 12th place Stormers hosting the 3rd placed Bulls. Now the Bulls are 2 games behind the top 2 teams, and they are 6 from 8 so far. Glasgow, sitting in 2nd place, are 7 wins from 10 games, and of course on top of the table are Leinster, who are unbeaten. Now in Japan League 1, we have the Dynaboars hosting Toyota Verblitz, the Black Rams hosting the Blue Revs, the winless D-Rocks hosting the Honda Heat. And then we get some juicy games this weekend as the 6th place Kobe Steelers are hosting the 7th placed Suntory Sun Goliath. The 3rd place Cannon Eagles are hosting the 4th place Kubota Spears. And in the big one, the grand final replay from last season, the top of the table clash, we have the Saitama Wild Knights hosting Toshiba Brave Lupus. Well, I have recently learned that saying Toshiba Brave Lupus is not something you can say fast. Now, in the Premiership Women's Rugby competition, they have catch-up games as well before going into the final 2 rounds proper. It is the Saleh Sharks hosting the Trailfinders. And in the big one, we've got the Bristol Bears sitting in 5th, hosting the Chiefs, who are in 4th. There is no Sevens games or no Sevens competitions this weekend. So then we must look forward to Big Mike's Big 3 games of the weekend. If you've only got time to watch one, follow one, see one, whatever, maybe make sure it's one of these guys. Now, I could just choose the top 3 games from the Six Nations. That's no fun. I'm going to stick with my rule of trying to keep 1 game from a competition. So we'll start with Japan League 1. This one's the big one. It's 1st versus 2nd, the Saitama Wild Knights versus Toshiba Brave Lupus. As I said earlier, this is a replay of last season's final that Brave Lupus won 24-20 after the Wild Knights up until that point had had an unbeaten season. In Premiership Women's Rugby, PWR, we have the Bristol Bears hosting the Chiefs. This is 5th versus 4th on the table, and it is as simple as this. If the Chiefs win and the Bristol Bears lose, then the Bears are out of contention, and the top 4 teams are sealed with a couple of rounds left. And finally, which game did I pick from the Six Nations? I could have gone England versus France, the classic matchup. I could have gone that bottom of the table clash with Italy taking on the Welsh. But I was basic and I went with Scotland hosting Ireland, 6th versus 2nd in the world, 2 unbeaten squads in this competition, fighting for lion spots. Both teams have got France ahead of them. Last week, Scotland defeated Italy and Ireland defeated England. They both got off to a good start, and one of those teams is going to have to go down and start crawling to get back on top of the Six Nations. Now, next week, there is a break in the Six Nations. The top 14 and the URC are back. Also next week, we are previewing Major League Rugby, Super Rugby Americas, and Super Rugby Pacific, all 3 competitions kicking off next week. What a great way to spend your Valentine's Day in 2025. But for now, thank you all for listening to the Rugby Roundup with Big Mike Sports. I have been Big Mike. And from the bottom of mine, I hope that you all have a beautiful week and watch some beautiful rugby.